pension deal that came out in the Senate this spring?
Well, what's happened since it came out in the spring is we've gotten some new information. As you recall, when it was passed, we were pretty clear that we thought it was inadequate in terms of the fact that it only covered 2 of the 5 systems. But we've since learned that the problem is probably worse than we thought it was. As Moody's and Gatsby have told us, the discount rate will be lowered, meaning that the liability is probably in the neighborhood of $130 million. In that case, with that new information, that bill clearly is not enough. We need to get back to the drawing board. So, no, we would not support it.
But if it was a step forward then, isn't it still at least a step in the right direction that you can put in the bank?
Yeah, the concern is that it will stop forward progress because a lawsuit will immediately be filed, in which case then probably the party in power would say, well, we've got to wait till that unfolds and see what happens. So it's just inadequate on too many fronts at this point. We need to go back and do comprehensive reform of all systems.
Part of the reason you need to do this is because of the Wall Street banks and the rating agencies. Do you think they're going to forget that you haven't done TRS and SURS?
Well, no, I think that that's ridiculous to think that it would somehow avert a downgrade. I mean, they certainly would see whatever we see that has to be an inadequate. But the more important reason for doing it is not just the downgrade, but the fact that we don't want to have people who are counting on a pension go to their mailbox when they think they're going to have a check and there's nothing there. That's the real reason we need to do this.
Well, given all that, what happens tomorrow?
Unfortunately, I don't think a lot happens. As I understand it, we have a meeting scheduled at 10 o'clock with the governor. But now, mind you, that's an hour or two before we go into session. My guess is we're not going to do comprehensive reform in an hour.
Do you have any new ideas, new proposals to put in front of them?
You know, I'm not married to any particular idea. The offer acceptance concept is one school of thought. I'm open to that. I'm open to not doing that. I'm open to the COLA, retirement age, employee contributions. The bottom line is it has to work to stabilize the system, and that is a mathematical problem that we need to focus on and get a solution. And how we arrive at it, I'm flexible.
It sounds like the only thing you're not open to is some sort of cost shift to the schools.
Correct.
Even gradually?
The reason I'm not open to that is, number one, that's not pension reform. That's reforming who pays for it. And secondly, I think that it has the potential to exacerbate the problem because we're just flipping the issue we have now where one party bestows the benefits and somebody else pays for it. If you shift the costs, all you're going to do is have the state bestow the benefits and shift it down to the locals, which is the problem that police and fire have gotten into. Secondly, it's just simply not fair that the Chicago Democrats want to solve their problem on the backs of suburban and downstate property taxpayers. We won't allow that to happen.
So how much do you need to save now? We've heard this Gatsby stuff twice today. What's the figure now that you need to save if it's $130 billion instead of $70 billion?
$83 billion. They were at 83 before, now it's apparently 130. It needs to be a more comprehensive reform. You know, again, we're not going to solve it in one day, but we need to have a bigger bite at the apple than just what's in the bill that's on the table today that does deal only with COLAs, which I think at the end of the day has to be a part of the solution because it's such an expensive piece of the benefit.
So what do you do to get at that extra $35 to $40 billion?
Well, again, I'm flexible. Things that have been talked about are retirement age, employee contributions.
But I mean, are you talking about a retirement age like 72 or 75? Or I mean, you're having to.
Well, I think what certainly would make sense to begin to think in terms of what Social Security does and mirror that. Obviously, in certain occupations, that's not reasonable. But what I'm for is solving the problem, and I'm open. So, if somebody says to me, that we can solve the problem by doing X, Y, and Z without the retirement age, I'm open to that.
But what about just doing away entirely with pensions for new employees? Just get rid of them. Is that an option for you?
Well, I think they'd have to be covered by Social Security for sure, and then have some sort of 401k. There's a difficulty in transitioning to 401k from a defined benefit. So, but if somebody can come up with a plan that does secure the retirement of state employees, I think that's fair. I think they do deserve to have a reasonable pension. But we need to solve the problem so they have somebody.
When you go into this meeting with the governor, is it going to be a matter of nobody leaves this room until everybody agrees? Leader Radogno, do you agree? I mean, it's not going to be like that. What kind of hammer do you have over this?
Well, the problem is it's really not a very productive approach. You know, we haven't had a single meeting in 8 weeks, so there's not been any real work on this. Obviously, what's on the table I don't think will pass, which means people have to get back together. But these theatrics of, you know, bringing people together and just saying we have to do it today, and that's all that's said, I don't think it's helping move us towards a solution. It's making people dig in, and it's counterproductive.
Well, what kind of hammer do you have? What kind of influence do you have where they're going to listen to you? You might have 1/4 of the seats in the leaders' meeting. You don't have 1/4 of the seats overall.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. So they have the majority, and if they want to pass something, I suppose they can. But they want our votes, which means we need to have a discussion, and they need to be able to accommodate some of our concerns.
Taking the pension stance, you want to vote now before the election?
On what?
You want the pension reform?
Well, I think the sooner the better, but it's going to require that we sit down, and if we come up with a plan that is reasonable, solves the problem, and we think we really do have bipartisan support, the sooner the better. I mean, if we have to, you know, if the leaders work on this, you know, for the next 3 weeks, and we got something we really thought was potential for passing, we should come back 3 weeks to pass
Do you
it.
think the Democrats are just trying to push it out in January and take the tough votes?
It does not appear that they're serious about passing
Do you think they're trying to pick
at least after the election.
If they don't take action, if there's no vote, is this an issue that you think will help you win seats in the Senate?
Honestly, I don't know that pension reform per se is something that moves votes. I mean, it's kind of complicated to get out there in a soundbite. But for the sake of the state and the sake of the people that are depending on these pensions, it's absolutely critical.
What if they offered a bill that did the COLAs for the 4 systems, not including the judges?
Well, we need to include the judges.
Well, it wasn't in the cross bill last fall. Okay, but let's say they offer the judges as well. What if they offered, basically an identical bill from last spring that did the COLAs for the 5 systems? Would that be acceptable at this point? Would that be a step forward?
I need to see the numbers in light of the new information. But again, I would be open to that depending on how it works. But I will not, if it includes a cost shift, that's not that.
Right, it didn't have, the cross bill didn't have the cost shift.
Did you say that you will not support passing this?
I wouldn't recommend doing it. Number one, it falls short because it's only 2 systems. Secondly, with that new information regarding lowering the discount rate, it clearly is not enough. Right.
Do you see any opportunity for Republicans to take advantage of the union anger toward Democrats, toward Governor Quinn? Is this something you can use somehow to pick up votes?
Yeah, that sounds so Machiavellian. We're not trying to use anything against anybody. But the fact of the matter is, they are angry, and I think this really illustrates what happens in our political system. I mean, those folks put in place people they thought would do their bidding for them, and now, because we're in such a difficult time, they have to propose something that's not something the unions want. They're angry. So my guess is they may be a little dispirited and just stay home.
So it's more a matter of them staying home as opposed to voting for Republicans?
There's no question that we'll be appealing to them and talking about how one-party control really doesn't lead to very productive solutions. Some people may be open to that, but we always are willing and wanting to talk with our union friends. It's in everybody's interest to solve this problem.
How come they're not really you guys?
Well, I think they're more angry at the Democrats because of the expectation they had. I'm not sure that they had a higher expectation for us.
Is it because Madigan's running the show? I mean, that's what the press says, because Madigan's probably running the state.
Well, and again, I think part of it is they're angry because the expectation is different. I mean, they put hundreds of millions of dollars over time into electing Democrats. Democrats have had complete control for 10 years, and not only have they not solved the problem, but now they're having to do something that is not in the union's interest in their opinion, which I should disagree with.
So is that today's theme, sort of, from a Republican standpoint, that this gigantic mess is not the party's fault?
First of all, we haven't really huddled on a theme for today.
we're all looking for one. If you can help with that.
But it's not a theme. I mean, it's the fact. The Democrats have had complete control for 10 years. The problems are far worse than they ever were, and they're not going to be able to let the tax increase expire if they continue with the spending they have. the pensions will be bankrupt. There's a real problem here, and it's very difficult for them to somehow try to blame Republicans. It makes no sense, and I think the unions have caught on to that.
What about all this time that was spent on this cost shift study? Was that a good use of time or just a maneuver?
Well, first off, I don't think a lot of time was spent on the cost shift study. It was some figures slapped together that were pretty quickly debunked as not very meaningful in the discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.